think it's safe to say that Wolfgang Gartner pioneered the Complextro scene. Would that be a fair statement? Nobody's come close to his signature sound of grabbing like 15, 20 random sounds, smashing them together in a beautiful drop, and just somehow it works. I don't get it. It's freaking hard. And for those of you who haven't heard Complextro, 2009 to like 11, 12, oh mate. Here's some of my personal favorites from him. Oh mate. And of course, how did bro make it work? I just don't know. I've been trying my best. I've just been breaking down all different elements and being like, okay, this is what he did here, this is what he did here. I'm gonna show you the steps I took to creating my own kind of Complextro 2010 sound. Anyways, let's start with the drums. Thankfully, he was making this in the era of Electro House, had 1.5 minute build-ups of drums, and then something else, and then something else. Because you know, all the tracks had to be DJ friendly, 1.5 minute intros, so I have isolated drums, which is great. Here's the 3 from the 3 tracks I played beforehand. None of them typically have like really low sub bass for the kicks, and the claps aren't really claps, they're kind of snares. See what I mean? That's definitely snare heavy. So with my drums, I actually pitched them down quite a lot because I didn't have any of those classic. I probably could have just downloaded a Vengeance sample pack and got the exact kicks and snares and whatnot, but yeah. Anyway, I didn't have like drums that were typically low enough, but not sub bass low. So I did a lot of EQ cutting on the sub bass, but the kick drums weren't low enough. So as you can see here, -8 semitones. Nah, that wasn't gonna cut it, so I had to go way lower, -8 semitones. Kind of gives it that Electro House aesthetic sound. A little bit of a boost with a transient click here, and then we got our kick drum. Snares. Of course, there's gonna be no bass with that, it's gonna interfere with the kick. We just wanted it to sit on top of the kick as well. If you have just an open snare, it sounds kind of messy. Blends it in a lot more. So EQ cuts all around, baby, and a little bit of a clap as well. That sounds very pitched down. Yeah, also -8. And hi-hats as well. No high end, very mono, and pitched down as well. Actually, when was this track released? Like 2010? Yeah, 14 years ago. As a society, we've pitched our drums up so much now. We want them fast, direct, and tight. Old school days, didn't give a fuck. It's just, it's happening. That sounds gangster. So, fucking gang. Anyway, that is the drums. Of course, it is saturated on the groove. Moving on to bass. Now, there is a lot of bass going on in his drops, so we want a particular one that we can milk over and over again, and that is typically like a saw wave with a bit of distortion on it. And if you see the steering patch right here, saw wave -2. Why did I put a sub on it? I can't remember why. Anyway, put a sub on it because that's also gangster. And yes, too clean. Way fatter, mid scoop, a little bit of saturation, and of course side chain to that kick and snare. At this point, I started coming up with random ideas, just like initiating MIDI control on my laptop. And I think I literally, for this bit, set the metronome going. Try to come up with ideas like this. Just tap the keyboard. You can notice on my MIDI here, I don't deviate from the G that much. Go down to F sharp and then back up to the G. Learned this from his actual drops over here. I tried to recreate some bass MIDI and to see what the hell the bass was doing. This is when the main kind of saw wave basses are happening. Da-da-da-da-da, drop down, da-da-da-da, drop down, and then of course the last refrain bit, which we'll get into in a second. Firepower as well. Main note, drop down, da-da-da-da-da, drop down quite a bit. Da-da-da. So it kind of deviates. You have your main root note and then you go down just a little bit sometimes like that. And so once I had a kind of progression going, quantize that so it's way better, not my shitty playing. And then added the bass with the drums. Sidechain doing bits as well. Like I was saying before, this refrain bit, you got to just jam up that bass note a few frequencies and then create some kind of chord magnificence. That's, I would say a key with the old electro house / Complextro sound is adding in the 3rd 16th right here. So if I just bring that back to the beat there, doesn't sound quite good. You want to jam this note right before the snare happens there. Very classic Wolfgang Gartner thing to do. Yeah, these refrains sections, you gotta balance the melodic with the bass craziness. Where's Firepower's one? There, and saw waves, organs. I should have used an organ on this actually. That would have been gangster. That's kind of the refrain for that one. Yes, you needed a little bit of extra spice at the end. Bounce it up a few semitones in the scale and then create some shenanigans. What I would recommend is descending, or I mean, that actually works. Yeah, stick with a couple of notes that are close together in the scale. I reckon that works really well. And then it's the fun part of grabbing different samples, the fun part and also the really, really hard part, grabbing a wide variety of sounds and then aiming for a masterpiece. So what I would recommend, your random staccato hodgepodge of sounds right here. So that's kind of like the only bass in that, random kind of stabby sounds, tonal melodic kind of effects like that. Lasers, more stabs. Like a long ambient choir kind of sound. This is going to be our refrain at the end. Sub drop, got to have at least one sub drop for this. And a siren, which you could just chuck in to complement some saw wave action. And then vocal chop. I don't think Wolfgang Gartner used a little bit of vocal chops, but it was working well for me, so I was like, it's going in. Once we have our random selections of sounds, it's time for the saw wave stack to use for our refrain. So I built up some chords around this bass, which I butchered before. In terms of creating your own, obviously lowest one starts with whatever the bass is doing. Maybe like a 5th as well, works pretty well. And then another layer just doing whatever the hell it wants. Use your scale tool and then just chuck random notes and see what works. You'll hear quickly what does and what doesn't. And of course some down sweep crash thing at the start. White noise, effects, yes. Now comes the hard part of which I called the Lego section. You're building up your Complextro drop. This is the random hodgepodge of sounds which I came up with for the drop. Use that bass that I had before, just saw wave bass, cool, and then try build the Complextro elements around that. So you'll notice a gap here. We could chuck a sub drop here, which we did. Intro of the choir, the kind of very powerful section there. And you're just looking for gaps to launch random stab sounds like this. I think that's the key. Because whenever the saw wave is playing, you want kind of sustained sounds on top of it and then save your stabs and your sharp sounds for breaks in between. Break from the bass here. We're going to introduce a new bass here, which is cool. And then a massive break from the bass here, and then we're just going to try and get our inner Wolfgang Gartner. Try to repeat this, have a phrase kind of striking the balance between new sounds in the drop and repeating sounds which you used before is difficult, 100%. But if you can find like a rhythmic kind of quality and element to just find the balance, I guess, is the key. I like how this also builds up into the last kind of bass note. We're reintroducing the bass again. So we've got a massive kind of dirty siren. Yeah, the kind of tension and release is a mad thing. Kind of repetitions, and then this big refrain. Of course, we're missing our stack there. So everything just glues together. It's like the gates of heavens open up and just like, oh, there we go. Spectrum bliss. All frequencies are just jamming. And you can chuck your atmospheric sustained sounds right at the end as well. And of course sidechain that. Maybe you didn't need that vocal chop. Thought, why not? Extra bit of variation. And all together, drums are punching. We've got our saw bass here. We've got our stack sound. Got a stack saw wave. A little bit of chorus and dirtying up. Make it a little bit cleaner with that EQ. And we've got our massive samples group, which by the way, bit of group processing. We have a glue compressor, glue it all together. A little bit of OTT, also help glue it all together. Saturator, also gluing it all together, because we've got so many different random sounds. We need a way for them to just... Yeah, we need the effects to help that. So of course, my go-tos would be glue, OTT, and saturator. And of course, side chain. And by the end of it, when I applied the down sweeps and rises, I came up with this. Yeah, hopefully you'll be proud of Wolfgang Gartner. I tried real hard with that. Oh, that was a mission and a half. I think I went through like 3 or 4 iterations of like different rhythms of sounds and samples for this. Until I settled across that, I was like, oh, this is a good blend of like repetition, new sounds. Can I make it work? And then somehow I did. I've still got a lot to learn, but that's what I did learn from dissecting those tracks. My 3 favorite Complextro tracks from the man himself, Wolfgang Gartner. And yes, this was a lot of fun. All right, see you guys in the next one. Peace.